Today is, what is today? February 23rd, Thursday, February 23rd. And this is the reconvened meeting of the Board of Finance for the budget hearings on the 2023-2024 budget. It's approximately 5:30, and I see that all members of the Board of Finance are present. So unless anybody has any, if any members have any questions or comments before we get started, we will get started with the Health Department on page 79. Welcome, Dr. Gus. How are you?
Good. How are you? Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
I can. Yes. I'm sorry. I had my mic on, but my speaker's off.
Okay. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'm hoping everyone can see that.
Yes.
So usually I like to use this opportunity of hearings to just give a little overview of what we've been up to at the Health Department in the last fiscal year. And so I just wanted to give a little overview. The first page is really kind of where we've been with COVID and the pandemic. So it really goes back to March 1st, 2020 through the end of the last fiscal year. So you could just see how many confirmed cases we had at that point. I'll say, we were at 12,300 and change at the end of the fiscal year, and now we're up to a little over 15,000 confirmed cases, and some additional deaths as well as the number of vaccines that have been administered among Milford residents, with close to 17,000 of those doses being administered by our department to the community. I'll highlight here the number of COVID-related phone calls has been close to 10,000, and that's really just the ones that we're tracking that come to our clerical staff alone, not our department as a whole. And so that's kind of where we were at the end of the fiscal year with the COVID pandemic, and we've continued our activities around vaccination and follow up on disease-related calls that we receive from the community, as well as from city employees and other local businesses and organizations. With our nursing division, this really just covers our last fiscal year and some data that I wanted to provide. We've conducted over 40 immunization clinics, and that does not include all of our COVID-19 clinics. And so those are really for a lot of routine immunizations, anything from hepatitis to MMR to Tdap, varicella, childhood immunizations. In terms of for just the fiscal year, we administered over 2,000 COVID-19 doses and over 600 flu vaccines. For the school nurses, so this past fiscal year, they saw 37,694 health office visits for a variety of issues, and administered about 11,000 medications or treatments. So those could be, again, this just kind of, as I always say, that the role of the school nurse has just continued to progress and involves a lot more than just Band-Aids and ice packs, and involves a lot of administration of daily meds, management of diabetics, tube feedings, etc. And then in our community health division, this is the division where we do a lot of follow-up on communicable diseases within the community, as well as grant applications, management, and implementation. So again, the diseases over the past fiscal year, again, this does not include our COVID data because COVID was above and beyond these numbers. But you can see consistently, we do get a number of communicable diseases within the community. Our foodborne illness cases require additional follow-up by our department. particularly if there are any outbreaks, and trying to determine the source of the foodborne illness. And then last fiscal year, we managed close to $500,000 in grant funds that allow us, one, to do a lot of the COVID work that we have been doing has been through grant funds received through the State Department of Public Health, as well as our specific health education programs in the area of opioid prevention, healthy homes, emergency preparedness, asthma education, and other programs within the community. Within public health emergency preparedness, so this is where a lot of our COVID response activities, for everyone's knowledge, we still have Medical Reserve Corps volunteers volunteering to support our response efforts for our vaccine clinics in particular. And so last year, there was close to 700 volunteer hours provided by Milford residents who have supported our activities. And then we continue to, again, over 17,000 vaccine doses provided to date. And then in our environmental division, this is our enforcement division. So we kind of categorized it based off of what we're trying to do with the environmental division in terms of safer food to eat, safer homes, safer environment. And so, you know, there's some data here on, you know, over 550 food service licenses issued, close to 1,000 inspections, a number of food illness investigations. And then in terms of the safer homes, you know, investigating unsafe conditions in homes, following up on complaints that have been received by the health department from community members. Specific to blight, 88 investigations conducted last year. And then with our vector control program during mosquito season, treatment and monitoring of over 100 sites throughout the community. We also test for ticks. And so it just gives you an overview of what we've been doing there. So I'll stop there for the health department related pieces, and I'll continue with human services when we get there. As far as our budget, the health department budget is flat. So we haven't requested any increases in that budget.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. How are you, Deepa? Nice to see you. This is Scott. You guys are busy. I'm just curious, the COVID slides of those deaths, like, do those stats include like residents in nursing homes here in Milford, and or is it?
If their primary address at the time of their death was, if they were dwelling at a nursing home for a long-term stay, that would have been counted. But if their primary residence was somewhere else and they were just doing like short-term rehab or something like that, that was not included.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then just in looking at 2021 to 2022, from a regular wage standpoint at 790, 685, and then looking at regular wages where they're proposed for this upcoming year, it's about a 25% increase. Is there any like one or two positions that created that jump, or is some of that COVID related, or what's the explanation for such a big increase over the last couple of years?
Those are just, and regular wages, typically finance puts in those numbers, but those are just contractual obligations, nothing new or different necessarily.
Gotcha. Okay.
Didn't we add a new position a year or two ago? Did that account for some of the increase?
2 years ago, the deputy director position was approved, so that that is included within those wages.
Yeah, I think that might.
So that answers that question then, because 790, you add in the deputy director of 96 and change. Then all of a sudden,
I think that may account for a good portion of it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess where I was driving with the question was I was just curious if you had to staff up for obvious reasons because of COVID, and then do we expect to remain staffed up now that, you know, I don't want to say COVID's behind us, but it's not as raging as it was 2 years ago. But that answers that question. So thank you.
Anything further?
Hey, Deepa, it's Lauren. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Just out of curiosity, what is the pest control? Is that when you're on site visiting places for upkeep, or is that like our buildings?
No, so the pest control line item is actually our mosquito monitoring program.
Okay.
So we contract with All Habitat. We put an RFP out regularly, and so that's for them to monitor and treat our mosquito breeding sites throughout the community and respond to complaints of mosquitoes.
Where are big sites?
There are a number of sites. A lot of them are, wow. So Erna Avenue, there's a number of stations throughout the
Really?
city. There's about 101 sites throughout the community. And then they also do they treat the storm drains and all of that. And it's
Okay.
all organic, biologic larvicide.
Interesting. Thanks. I was just curious.
No problem.
Thank you. If there's nothing further on health department, I think we can move on to education, health services, school nurses, page 95, I believe.
So for the education health services budget, you will see that there are some changes within that budget. All of them are really relative to contractual obligations in the newly negotiated contract with the nurses union. So specific to the overtime line item, there was a change in their contract where they are eligible for overtime at time and a half, whereas before there were circumstances where they would get straight time. So that accounts for the adjustment there. Under seasonal temp, the increases due to the minimum wage rate. For educational bonus, so that was also adjusted in the new contract and is relative to the level of degree that each of the nurses have. So that number was calculated based on our existing nurses and what their degrees are. And then for the school nurse certification, I tried to adjust in the line items that I could. So I went based off of the number of nurses we currently have that school nurse certification is only 5. And by contract, they get $1,000 for having that certification. So those are the line items that have increased or decreased this year.
Okay.
And if I could ask a very similar question to the one I had earlier. So 21 to 22, you know, we were looking at about 1.2 million and change. Now we're looking at over 1.6 million. So almost a 30% increase. Did we layer in more nurses or staff over the last couple of years? Is that, because that's more than a contractual increase. Like, did we layer in more
I'm seeing
nurses?
1.4 in the budget book. I don't know if
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the department total. So yeah, if we roll it up to
just the regular wages.
just the wages, it goes from 1,207 to 1,528. But I was looking at the department total. But yeah. It's really driven more by the wages.
There has, again, that is still, there have been no new positions added to the nurses in several years prior to maybe my time. So most of that is contractual, but I think what's driving the overall increase within this budget really is around the educational bonuses, where there was a larger jump.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Moulton.
Yes.
The nurses contract just recently settled. It would have been brand new. So it was retroactive for, I believe, 3, maybe 4 years. So there was approximately between 2 and 2.5% wage adjustments for each of those 2 years. So those compounded. So the last budget book that you would have had would not have had the benefit of, those 3 or 4 consecutive increases for each of the nurses. And in addition to that, this contract also had took a look at some educational bonuses for those nurses. One of the things that I did yesterday is I went to a Council of Governments meeting, and the number one most difficult to fill occupation across the region and the state is nurses, not necessarily school nurses, but nurses in general. It's the largest number of openings for any occupation in Connecticut at this moment in time. So it is difficult to fill those positions. Hence, one of the reasons why we did want to make sure that we were competitive with those educational bonuses. That was something that the negotiating team took a look at in finalizing the contract that was settled within this year.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, Mayor. That helps explain it a little bit more, because you're looking at almost a 9% increase in about 2 years. So that does make sense if there was a retro increase there. And Deepa, you're at full capacity, or are you still, like, how many nurses are you down? How many do you need?
I'm not right now. I am down 2 nurses, and we have had at least 1 vacancy to up to 3 or 4 over the past several years. So we are having a hard time filling those positions for sure. And we've had it posted for quite some time, and we are not, getting a whole lot of applicants. So it is a challenging position to fill.
Gotta give these kids vitamin C and some vitamin D and hope they don't get sick, and then it doesn't matter as much. No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. My kids are always at the school nurse, so this is great. Thank you.
Well, we're happy to serve you.
Yeah, most of the time it's just because they want to come home. But
Okay. Well, I'm at, there's no further questions on school nurses, education, health services, Milford HSD agency, which I'm at human resources, but Peter, HSD is
Human
That's me.
services.
Yeah.
It's on page 90.
90, thank you.
Page 90.
Human Services Department, got it. Thank you.
If it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so for human services, just some general information for the fiscal year. So we have 2 community outreach workers that work in that department. And so over the last fiscal year, they managed a total of 230 cases, which totaled out to 484 Milford residents that were served. Of those, 9 were homeless cases that translated to 17 individuals who were case managed by our outreach workers. In terms of the services that were provided, it was in a variety of areas, including utility assistance, rent and mortgage assistance, emergency food assistance, as well as support to families within the community. As we always have, we do apply for grants and have received grants to be able to provide that emergency financial assistance. So those funds come primarily through the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, which is a national program, but administered locally through the United Way of Greater New Haven. So we apply for funds through them, as well as through community block grant funding. Unfortunately, those funds alone do not meet the needs that we see from year to year for Milford residents seeking assistance. And so we partner with the United Way of Milford, the Salvation Army Milford Service Unit, as well as St. Mary's to cost share when we are able to, in order to meet the needs that we are seeing locally. One of the things I'll just point out is that our grant funds have increased significantly. So it used to be in prior years when I showed this, that our other partners kind of took care of a little bit more of the pie than we were able to because we didn't have the grant funds. But year after year, we continue to increase our ability to get some grant funds to support our emergency assistance. Particularly in the last year, we were able to get some COVID relief, ARPA funding to be able to support these activities. We also administer holiday programs in partnership with a lot of local organizations, including the Boy Scouts, Women's Inc., St. Mary's Church, the Elks Club. And so we provided 417 Thanksgiving food baskets to Milford residents, totaling over 1,000 residents who received food baskets, as well as our Adopt a Family program during the winter holidays, which is a gift program. So we served 245 individuals through that program through the generosity of about 39 donors within the community. In addition to those outreach services, we also have a youth and family services division within Human Services. And so the goal of that division is to be able to support youth and families within our community in a variety of ways. So this past year, we held a Strong Families webinar series. Really, much of the work is around some of the mental health needs of our community and being able to do educational series to support families. And a lot of collaborating with community agencies in order to get the work done. So that's just a quick overview of what we've been up to the past year. And in terms of the budget, everything, we did not request any increases, so the budget is flat.
Well, thank you again. It's a lot of good work and helping many people. Thank you. Any questions on Milford Human Services Department? Okay. I think that's it for you tonight, right, Deepa?
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very helpful.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, moving on, page 41, Human Resources Department.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
For those of you who may not know me, I'm Tanya Barnes. I'm the Human Resources Director with the city. Overall, HR continues to be quite busy with recruitment, benefit administration. We do the pension administration for our retirees, as well as health benefits for retirees. Wellness efforts. We recently opened our employee wellness center that had been closed for a while due to COVID, and we have reactivated fitness classes for our employees. We have been very busy on the labor relations front in collaboration with the city attorney's office. So we just finished a round of contract negotiations, our 9 contracts. Many of them, as Mayor Blake stated, were retro to 3 to 4 years. So we concluded that, and we're busy getting back at the table with 2 of those bargaining units that are expiring this coming June. Also conducting employee investigations and responding to CHROs, unemployment benefits, and the like. And the last piece has been training. We've been trying to focus on training more. Our testing software that we utilize for many of the civil service positions that are of an administrative level included this past year a training software that we've rolled out to our employees to enhance their skills in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and the like in the Microsoft suite. So that is one of the areas that we have been trying to focus and working with department heads to try to get newly promoted employees into who are in supervisory roles to obtain some training through partner organizations such as CCM and Compelra. And that's what I have. Overall, the budget is flat. There were two lines that I discussed with the mayor as I was going through this year, which was one to include $2,500 for a summer intern. We would like to bring on a college student to be able to support us with some special project efforts. And as the mayor stated, recruiting in the public sector is very challenging, including in the healthcare area, but I think in all areas. So it would be a great opportunity to introduce folks to public sector employment and opportunities. And then the last piece was increasing the training budget again a little bit to $5,000 from $2,000 to be able to support department heads with more of the soft skill trainings in terms of management training, supervisory training, and team building and like.
Excellent.
Also, just to speak to the discrepancy in the wages, the same thing, the members of my department are part of the City Hall union, and that contract was expired back to 2019. So the wages that you were looking at last year were July 1 of 18. So these wages are a couple of years in. So you can see that the jump is because of that.
Excellent. Thank you for the information. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, thank you, Tanya. Thank you for
Well,
your
thank you
time
so
today.
much. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, moving on. I believe next item is elections, page 14.
And just to clarify the last department, the City Hall union just settled. I think we just signed the contract within the last week. So the wage adjustment is not in your books yet.
Excuse me, Mayor, this
Is it?
is Peter Eridisi. It actually is in the book. I was able to work off the tentative agreement.
Okay,
So the wages in the book are updated and reflect the new contract.
okay.
Great.
Did you say, what was next? I had public library. Am I not on the most up to date?
Well, you were like me a couple days ago. I think you were on the, unless I'm working off the old agenda again, I think that was the next three items, library, probate, and community were moved to next week. 27th.
Okay, library, okay,
Good to know.
got it.
Well,
Yep.
hopefully I've got the right agenda today.
Oh, community.
Yeah, so those three, the next three items are moved to with Monday, I believe, the 27th.
Okay, so I'm on 14.
Yes, elections. So I think I see Carrie here and Karen
Deborah's-
and Deborah.
Aye.
We can address elections, and if you'd like, you can jump right into registers, and then we'll go to city clerk. So elections, page 14, and register, page 15. Welcome.
Should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So regarding elections, when we met with the mayor, we knew that early voting was something that had passed in the last election as a question, but we had no idea of what that was going to look like. And in the last few days, we've gotten a lot more information. And I know that Deborah and I often come before you in this situation with new legislation that's going to affect our budget, especially elections. And in this particular case, I think it could be one of the largest increases that we have undertaken. And I want to just sort of explain to you why that is. There are 4 proposed bills out there, one from the Secretary of the State that says early voting should take 10 days prior to Election Day. But there are other proposals that are for 14 days in early voting, and also there's 18 days of early voting. And so when we heard that, we started to think about this is in addition to our normal preparation and our normal staffing that we have when there's one election day and one absentee ballot collection period. And this is quite a different animal, I guess, is a good way to put it. So I did some quick calculations that I just like to share with you to try to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So if we go with the most conservative estimates at a 10-day early voting window, the proposal says that 8 of those days will be from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Keep in mind that our office hours are 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., 4 hours a day. So this is an 8-hour window, 8 days out of the 10. And then 2 of the days would be from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. This is going to look a lot like how we run our election day registration. And I can get into, the details of that if you want, but I'll just try to keep it sort of upper level stuff. So anyway, back to those 10 days would be 64 hours extra and for the 10 to 6 window, and 24 hours extra for the 8 to 8 window. That would be 88 extra hours of election voting coverage we would have to have poll workers cover. This is not something that can just be staffed by our office, because in addition to people doing early voting, it'll also be election day registration happening. So that just means that somebody can come from another town on one of those early voting days and say, I don't live in West Haven, I now live in Milford, here's my ID. And we have to call West Haven, make sure that they haven't already voted there. We have to process their registration in the computerized voter registration system. They have to fill out an application. Then they get a ballot for the district in which they live here in Milford. And then they vote that ballot, seal it in an envelope, sign the affidavit on the back of the envelope, and cast the ballot, not in a tabulator, but in a locked ballot box. So it's a very cumbersome process, and it will require what I and Deborah have talked about is a minimum number of staffing. And we're worried that will include a moderator, like we see on election day, 2 assistant registrars. We'll need probably 4 experts on computerized voter registration system like we do during EDR, because all of the proposed legislation requires us to look up everybody in the Connecticut voter registration system to make sure they haven't voted. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. We're talking about if we have 8 polling places in a municipal election, I was thinking 8 checkers at minimum would be needed, because we'll also have to be drawing lines through the names like we do on election day. Ballot clerks, there's 8 polling locations. So, normally we would have 2 or a ballot clerk for every line of checker books, but at minimum, we're looking at about 8 ballot clerks. Probably they have to be separated, the ballots, when they're inserted into the locked drop boxes by district, so that they can be allocated to those districts. So at least 4 ballot box tenders. I'm envisioning a person sitting between 2 ballot boxes and monitoring 2 of those of the 8 polling location boxes. And then perhaps 2 greeters who are getting people into the right line and helping them through the process if they need assistance, or if there's a problem with their voter registration and they have to come, like I'm envisioning at the Parsons Gym is our centralized location, that they could, get them to our office if there was a real problem with somebody's voter registration or such. So let me just give you the bottom line, because it's a big number, but we're talking about 88 extra hours of coverage for voting. We're talking a minimum of 29 people staffing. If we figure that at merely a minimum wage pay rate, we're talking about $38,000 minimum. And that's for general elections and primaries. The good news is that the first primary that would be affected is not until after 2024, but it does affect this budget, because the April presidential preference primary, we will be looking at early voting. With that said, our history has shown us that it takes about $135,000 in the election account to run both a general election and a primary. And I'm worried we could be easily $40,000 short with the most minimum requirements for early voting. Now, there's a hope that the state will provide us some funding on this, but as I've said to you before, I hope any state money that we get goes to new tabulators, because our tabulators have struggled with absentee ballot counting because of the folds. And when we fold a ballot and put it in an envelope and leave it in a drop box for 10 days, that poses some problems too, as does taking those envelopes out and locking them into storage bags and sealing them with the serial number tags and such. So the wear and tear on the tabulators is my primary concern. Let's hope the state comes up with enough money for tabulators and for the staffing issues that we're going to face. But like we've just heard in the last couple of, nurses are the biggest shortage. But the public sector is short in general. Poll workers are also very short and hard to come by, especially when we used to be able to get people who have jobs to take a vacation day and work election day for the 16, 18, 20 hours. It's going to be very difficult ask for people to take additional time off from work. So we've already started brainstorming about creative ways to find people to work these positions, but I think Karen and Deborah and I are very concerned about staffing and the cost associated with it to the city budget. So we don't have a hard and fast number to give you. I'm just warning you that it could be significantly more depending on what we're required to do for the positions. I just gave you the minimum staffing amounts based on current election standard. In addition to that, I just want to quickly add that there will be a process of counting ballots at the end of each early voting night, where we have to secure them and lock them with the city clerk, which will be after city clerk hours, which may require in effect overtime. We'll be data entering every person who voted into CVRS on a nightly basis. Right now, we use paper poll books, as you know, where we literally cross them off with red pencil. So we'll be hand data entering unless they come up with improvements to our system, which allows us to scan them in, more similar to what Karen's able to do with the absentee ballot processing with hand scanners. Hopefully that's something that we do that will save us some time. And then we have to reprint every night. So even though the hours may be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., I anticipate we could be there until 10 p.m., cleaning up the data so that we're ready to open and make sure nobody's voting twice on the next day. This is a significant issue since we've had an issue with, as I'm sure you've heard it, that we had somebody through our canvas who voted in Florida and also here in Milford by absentee. And through our canvas process, we were able to report that voting twice. And now that person is a convicted felon in Florida for voting twice. So it's not something we take lightly. And so all this extra work and diligence will be required to ensure that the vote is safe and that the votes counted are the ones that should be counted. So with that, I'm sure I've given you more than enough information. Deborah or Karen, if you have anything to add, or if you have any questions, I'm sure we're happy to answer them.
Thank you, Carrie. That was very helpful. Any questions from the board, comments?
Thank you, Carrie. It's Scott. How are you? Excuse me. So let me just make sure I understood what you described. So you're projecting this is what it's going to be like next budget year, not necessarily.
No, the budget we're working on right now. So the plan
so
is that it will happen
okay.
in November of this year. Yeah. So
Gotcha. Okay.
This budget starts July 1.
Yep. Okay. And like during the pandemic, how is that process you laid out different than how you handled things during the pandemic? Because weren't we doing a lot of mail-in ballots and absentee ballots at that point? Like, is that
so?
How,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So what we saw from the pandemic was an increase of absentee ballots. In a normal presidential election pre-COVID, we were looking at about 2,500 absentee ballots. In 2020, we processed 12,000 absentee ballots. And what we were able to do was anticipate that change, and we lessened the number of checkers positions at the polling locations and utilize those people as envelope cutter openers. To open there's 2 envelopes. So literally we were opening 24,000 envelopes. And the state allowed us to start opening just 12,000, the outer envelope, the weekend before. So we utilized all of the staffing from the polling location, and it was more of a shifting of resources. In this particular case, this is 10 to 18 extra days with 88 hours I have that if it were 18 days, 160 hours of possible extra coverage that we did not see in COVID. And that's the major difference. This is in addition to absentee ballot counting, which will still continue, and also election day registration. Instead of just being on election day, will also be available during the early voting window.
Effectively, we're counting the same votes. We're just spreading it over many, many more days, which stretches staff
Correct.
thinner. So that seems like a
Nightmare.
Yep, okay, gotcha. It just seems like a bad business move, but that's neither here nor there.
Anything further? All right, Deborah, Carrie, thank you. Register of voters, page 15. It ties into what your presentation, but if there's anything specific to the registrar's office.
I would just add that because our office hours are 9 to 1, we probably are going to be short in our seasonal temporary and our overtime accounts, because we're going to have to be in our office and or serving as early voting poll workers in some manner or capacity, especially since CVRS is an integral component of early voting, and we are the experts of that. I anticipate having to move staff from our office to the early voting locations in order to have that added piece, which we don't normally have on election day, because they're the ones who know how to register voters through the system. So we will juggle, but we're going from asking them to work, our deputies work 20 hours, 4 hours a day, or our seasonals work 12 hours a week, to increasing their time. And that will put a strain on our current seasonal and overtime accounts. But we can't really anticipate how much that will be at this time until we know exactly what early voting bill will be adopted.
Understood.
When do they, hey, Carrie.
Hi.
When do they plan on deciding?
Well, I know they're talking about it right now and they're drafting bills. We have 74 pages of bills that Deborah and I have been combing through, trying to find what's common in all of them so that we can anticipate that's likely to happen. And I know that Stephanie Thomas, the new Secretary of the State, is urging the legislature to get something done sooner rather than later. Her target date is in March, so that there's plenty of time for us to be trained as registrars and then train our poll workers in how, and the Secretary of the State's office is going to have to produce training and sort of an outline, as they have done with election day registration, and how they envision it. And then we're going to need the time, because we're going to have to submit a plan to the Secretary of the State's office about how we're going to lay it out, where we're going to locate early voting. And again, the gym in Parsons is probably our most central and largest place. But, I've talked to the rec department, who's not happy about us being in there for the few days generally. So this will be, quite difficult on the rec department for sure, who utilizes that gym on a daily basis. So it'll take some coordination, but we're hoping we'll have a lot more information before we go before the aldermen.
Excellent. Okay, anything further?
Good luck.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks. We're gonna need a lot of luck.
All right.
Lauren, just make sure you only vote once this time, okay? This way they don't have to double count anything.
The trip to Florida was great.
Okay, city clerk, page 22. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, everyone?
Good.
Good. So, my budget is flat other than the wage increases. Business is good. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you. Last year, you approved an increase in my budget for, my new, records management software. So that was, we transitioned over to that new program in May of this year. I'm sorry, of 2022. And it's been a game changer. Fabulous program, really increasing efficiencies, not only in my office, but among other city departments. So it's been great. It's allowing us to consolidate all our information and really critically creating digital backups of our vital records. So we have birth, deaths, and marriage records going back to 1906 that we only have paper copies of. So now we're creating e-copies of all these documents. It's going to take some time, but it gives me a lot of peace of mind knowing that, God forbid, something happens in the vault, we're going to have backups of these documents. So thank you very much for voting in favor of this software. Thanks to the mayor and the Board of Aldermen. It's really changed the way the office works.
Yeah, I've used it. It's very good.
Karen, I don't want to interrupt you, but the best thing that happened to us in terms of serendipitous timing about the switchover from COT to the new system was that as soon as we switched over, COT was hacked into, and all the land records across the state that were under the COT system were unavailable for weeks and weeks and weeks. So it was just, bad for COT customers, but good that we were no longer a COT customer.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions or comments from the board?
Karen, are you fully staffed in the
Yes.
office there?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you. So moving on to Council on Aging, page 87, I believe. If we go into our grant departments, yes, Council on Aging, page 87.
Hi, good evening. A little.
Good evening, fellas. Good evening, Laura.
Good
morning, good evening. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Yes. They get longer, unfortunately. So if you're certainly welcome to make a presentation if you like.
Sure. So in terms of our budget is flat. Can you hear me okay? I'm not feeling very well, so I'm a little.
Yes, I hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So in terms of our budget right off the bat, we are flat. There hasn't been any changes that we've asked for. We haven't asked for anything this year, same as last year. So just want to kind of give everyone a reminder of what we do at the senior center. I know, I'm sure you all know of the senior center, but may have forgotten some of the programs that we offer. So we offer our social activities through our programming department. We focus on the biopsychosocial well-being of the members and older adults in our community. We have our regular fitness programs, our yogas, our theater, dance, our painting classes, educational classes. We offer assistance with taxes by hosting both AARP and VITA. Our full social service department offers resources to community members as well as our general older adult members that we have there. Transportation is offered to our members who are seniors and or disabled. We offer a Aaron's Respite program for individuals who have a diagnosis of a dementia or Alzheimer's disease. We have our mini lunch program that offers a nice, hot, nutritious meal at a very affordable price. And we've been able to maintain it at this affordable price for our members, which is great. Our Meals on Wheels program is serving approximately 90 clients in Milford. So we have our program where we're also offering the hot meals right to frail and medically homebound individuals. And then our food bank has been helping to support our full community, and not just Milford, but people who may be in situations where they have to find a safe location to find food. Their goal there is to just connect food to people. Overall, our soundness of the organization, we just completed our financial audit with Cohen Kaufman and Associates. And they did indicate that we are looking great financially in terms of how sound we are. We do have a reserve of approximately 7 months, which is something that is great to have as a backup in the event of any type of scenario that may occur. Additionally to that, we've been working on wage equity for our staff, which means that we're trying to ensure that not only are we within the range of wages, so that we can have and hire and maintain and retain, I should say, staff. They're able to, we are looking at it in a proactively. So we're ahead of the game when it comes to minimum wages. So we are looking at every single aspect when it comes to what we offer as our membership and what we offer our employees as well. If Phyllis wants to kind of chime in and talk a little bit more or mention anything about the finances, as she is our accounting coordinator for our senior center.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm fine. I think that Leonora gave a very accurate presentation as to the scope of what the center has done and how important it is to our community. Our finances are kept intact, and we have been able to presented the budget for the last 3 years as to what we had done during COVID and how we work with the community to help people during that time period. And then up to 23 and 24, what we anticipate. And we presented that to the mayor and to Peter, and we just wanted to make that analysis rather than just give 2 years. So that was our presentation to the budget. So.
Are there any questions?
No, thank you. Thank you for the information. Any questions from members of the board?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, if I could. Thank you, Lenora. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you very much. How much of this grant, like what is your overall budget? Like is like how much of your budget does this grant cover? How much of your budget is covered by dues and stuff like that?
So just recently with our financial audit, Mr. Kaufman indicated that approximately 88% of the budget, of the budget is through the city grant. So the city is absolutely the biggest supporter, and it's very much appreciated because it's not like that in all cities in Connecticut. I could tell you I'm part of the Connecticut Association of Senior Center Personnel, and I could tell you there's a big gap, and this city is doing it right. They're doing the right things all the time when it comes to our older adults.
Yeah, so that makes up a pretty big portion. And 7 months of reserves. What are you talking about? Reserves for your month-to-month expenses? So, what's that, Jace? That would be
I want to, Phyllis, you have the exact number there that
like 928 and change?
Yeah, I think, I want to say it was,
Yeah, 7 times, yeah. It's
yeah,
7
you're
months,
close to it. It's like just over $1 million. I
yes.
think what he said. I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me.
Is it just an idle cash or what do you guys do with it?
As of right now, the board made some, I would say a smart move by taking it earlier on, placing it in our Edward Jones account. And prior to it kind of teetering down a little bit, it was doing well. And it was very smart decision because it wasn't just sitting idle and not helping.
Well-
I believe it was in the Milford.
It was CDs, that
It
was
was CDs,
CDs that
thank
were getting lower every time. It was like keeping it in a checking account. And we
Exactly.
transferred it and we did it at a very good time when the market was doing very well. That was when we made that move and it worked out right away. It worked out very well.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for all you do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. Nothing further? We'll move on to Milford Arts Council. I almost said Milford Fine Arts Council, but I caught myself.
Night.
Welcome, Paige. How
Thank
are
you,
you?
Brian. Good evening, everybody. I want to echo what Leonora was saying before, that the city of Milford supports its organizations and the services that the city and the community provides for its residents and visitors. So I just want to start by thanking everybody for that. We did ask for a chunk of larger gift from the city this year. We've been kind of flat for a number of years. I think during my tenure, it's been just about 10 years now. I would say that the $70,000 supported about a third of our expenses. And now we've grown our budget to where it's probably supporting about a quarter of our needs. Through COVID, we have continued to see a drop in membership. We have seen a huge drop off in our sponsorship dollars from our local businesses who are still rather reticent and nervous about handing out larger chunks of money to support programming. Our programming continues to grow as much as staff and myself keep saying to ourselves, we just need to learn to say no. We tend to say yes when anybody comes to us with a new idea. So a recent new partnership is now with School of Rock. We are hosting their recitals with their students. We just had the first one, and the families and the organization was really, really enamored with the space, giving their students a professional stage and sound tech for that event. And they are planning their next one in the next couple months. So I think that we've really strived through the pandemic to make sure that we're using our spaces for more of community needs rather than simply for our programming that goes for the Firehouse Gallery in Walnut Beach as well as at the MAC. We have pushed ourselves and realized that a marketing person at 25 hours a week was completely overwhelmed with the amount of work, with the amount of programming that we have to promote and market throughout the community on different platforms. We are returning to some old school platforms. We're putting in more print advertisement in both magazine and newspapers, which is also added costs. A lot of our social media platforms are now charging. And we have increased the hours for a marketing person from 20 to 25 to about 35, plus an additional outside contractor to handle social media marketing at about another 15 hours a week. We also added a part-time admin to take the load off of our business manager so that she can now focus more on development, which will hopefully bring up our membership and donor dollars. So we're really doing what we can across the board. We were very, very lucky this year. We put forward for a multi-year grant through the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven for staffing aid. And we received a 2-year grant for $20,000 for each year. That will cover the expansion that we've put in place with a new admin and expanding our marketing hours with basically a 1.5 staff role. But that's only for 2 years, which is why we asked for $20,000 above our 70. We know that that's not sustainable. We're going to do our best, but our programming and attendance has also not returned to pre-pandemic levels.
Thank you, Paige. It is a wonderful asset for the community, so thank you for all your hard work. Any questions, comments from the board?
Hi, Paige. I was just wondering how many full-time employees and part-time employees are.
Well, my business manager, who's now business and development, and myself are salaried, but our salaried hours are based upon like a 30-35. We're not considered full-time. We get no benefits. My marketing person that we just hired is 30 hours. The contract outside person is 15 hours, and our admin is 16 to 20. Again, we've had to do that because our volunteer pool has completely has sufficiently decreased as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for your time tonight, and good luck with the upcoming year.
Thank you so much. Hope to see some of you at our events.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you again for everything.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to Transit District. I think I see Henry there.
Good evening.
Welcome. How are you?
Doing well. I know some of you have a pretty good idea what we do, but for those that don't, I'll give you just a very quick rundown. We have 26 employees. We have an operating budget of $2.5 million, and this year we'll have a capital budget of approximately $2.2 million. The city's request is a flat one from last year to this year, and it represents about 8% of our overall budget. We operate a local fixed route service, a reverse commute work service from Milford to Norwalk, an ADA van service, a senior transportation service, and we also manage the parking at the Milford station for the Metro North commuters. Our fixed routes do about 300,000 trips a year. The van services do about 24,000 trips a year. The parking at the train station has made a comeback since March 20th of 2020, from 0 to approximately 60 to 65% now. Although the sale of permits for the spaces that are available is very close to 85 to 90%. So some people just don't want to let go of those permits. But we have been able to vanquish a very lengthy wait list that we had for spaces there. So pretty much now anyone who does call that wants to purchase a permit can do so. And we also have a daily parking in one of the lots there also. Again, with flat funding, we're very fortunate financially that although COVID wasn't very cool, that through COVID, the CARES Act was passed and the American Recovery Act was passed, and we were able to get some significant grants. Much of it went towards sanitization of the building station, the buses. We still daily sanitize the buses. That some of those things became quite expensive. Putting barriers in the driver's area of all the vehicles so that there was no contact. They were actually originally made for protecting the physically protecting the drivers, but as it turned out with COVID, they not only did that, but they were able to separate the drivers from the passengers. And also during that time, there was no fares collected, and that continues, and that's scheduled to end, still going on with no fares, and that's to continue until the end of March so far. But there's also bills in the legislature to continue it for another period of time after that, but I don't know how that's going to work out. We are reimbursed for those fares from the state of Connecticut, so it doesn't hurt us financially there. We're very, very, very thankful for the city's support, which always is a significant, even though 8% doesn't sound like much, it's a very significant amount to us in itself and for cash flow reasons, because unfortunately the state is not that quick in reimbursing us, and that's one of our major sources of income. So with that, if there's anything that I can help you with, or any questions you have, I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you, Henry. Any questions from the members of the board?
What are fares for the bus, Henry?
Geez,
Is that, are they just gonna?
It's so long since we collected. I gotta try to think. It's $1.75 for an adult fare on the buses.
Yeah.
Half of that is handicapped or just elderly fare. There's some programs through the state for community colleges and other students that we also get reimbursed for. And you could also buy 30-day passes, 10 ride passes, all-day passes that are discounted a bit. Fares on the vans are $3 a trip. And that includes going from Milford to New Haven, Milford to Bridgeport, Milford to Milford. We generally serve, of course, Milford and Greater New Haven, from Milford to Greater New Haven, Greater Bridgeport, and towns in between. But all the trips are $3 each way.
Right. Thank you. It's cheap.
Thank you.
Do we see the same amount of volume with usage on the buses as we did pre-COVID or during COVID? And
Pre-COVID, the fixed route buses have made a significant return. They're close to 85% of what it was to 90% of pre-COVID, and many of those runs are primarily work trips for entry-level positions. So a lot of those people, they're not working at home.
right.
They don't have that choice. The van services have not caught up nearly as much yet, because we did a lot of different group trips, and a lot of those trips were from home or school to programs. And a lot of those programs now, since COVID, instead of the individuals or young children going from school to program, the programs came to the schools. So they stayed in school and the parents picked up later. A few other group trips like that have really significantly, and people working from home also have cut down, because instead of transit picking up grandma to go to the doctors, someone's home now that may be taking that trip instead, which in a way is fine. But there's still more work to be done. We've got an advertising campaign going on. You might have seen not too long ago, cards in the mail about how the buses are free and the vans, what we can do. And we're doing some more of that and some more social media. Because there's still a lot of people that, I think everybody knows what's going on, but you kind of get cloistered in that way, that a lot of people that can use our services don't know a lot about it. And we're going to make a special effort to see that people do.
Right. That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Have a good evening. Okay, moving on. Couple more items. We have Bethel Center on page 92. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, good evening, everybody. How you doing this evening? It's so good to see everyone. I always enjoy coming or being here with you all, and just hearing about all the great work in the city. And so happy to be here with you tonight. The center did request a slight increase in our grant dollars. This is incredibly important and incredibly appreciated. We've seen a lot of need this year, and it has been anticipated and expected, kind of post-COVID, or as Scott mentioned earlier, through the bulk of COVID. Not that we're behind it, but So just a quick rundown of what the center's been doing, and where your support goes. So we have 6 programs, and they fall along a continuum of services. Kind of at the very beginning of that is our diversion services, our homeless prevention services. A number of that is in the Milford area. About 25% of the folks that we serve program are directly from Milford. And to just the relationship with like human services and the work that we do with Deepa's office. There's kind of homeless prevention work, like, previous to at imminent risk. So our imminent risk category is 2 weeks before somebody is leaving their home. And so their office kind of takes before that window, and we take at the imminent risk period after that window, and happy to go through that a little bit more, and literally homeless. So over the past 2 years, the center has served 175 households in our diversion services program. We also have outreach and engagement. That case management program is critical. We've seen an increase in homelessness by 40% over the past year, and in 2 areas, particularly families and unsheltered homelessness. So in 2021, we served 108 individuals in the outreach and engagement program. And in 2022, we served 116. That program is primarily for Milford. That doesn't mean that we have 116 people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in Milford every night. But there is some transient population, folks that are arriving to the center by train or by other methods, having a meal in our soup kitchen and getting assistance through our outreach program. But that is the vast majority of folks who are in the Milford area. Of course, you all know our shelter services very well. We have 2 shelter programs. One is our year-round shelter for men, women, families, and veterans. And in 2022, we served 132 people in this program, 94 adults and 38 children. And in our No Free Shelter program, which runs from mid-November to the end of March, this year, we've served at this point in time, right, the end of February, we have about a month left on the program. We've served just over 50 unique individuals in that winter shelter program. Our soup kitchen continues to be bustling. We serve about 100 to 125 meals per day, typically 2 meals per day. And over the past 2 years, we've seen about a meal increase of about 10,000 meals. So pre-COVID, we were serving around 24,000 meals a year. And in 2022, we served 33,472. And last but not least, we have our permanent supportive housing program. That program is Liberty Point on 85 New Haven Avenue. We have also expanded case management services to folks who are, we call it scattered sites. So folks who have vouchers coming out of Bethel, specifically for families, vouchers who are coming out of Bethel who are living in the Milford area, partnering, utilizing our case management capacity to provide case management services for those families who need some extra support over the first year or 2 to maintain that stable housing. You heard me mention that we've seen an increase of 40% in homelessness as a state over the past year. That's very concerning. It took us about 8 years to reduce the homeless population in the state by 40%, and only 2 years to lose that ground. But we're doing a lot of advocacy in many different arenas, but at the state, to try to increase state contracts to support this work more. The state only provides us about 35% of our operating budget for our emergency shelter programs and outreach programs and the like. And so there's obviously a real need for more support there. But when it comes down to the requests from the city and the great work that you all do, that funding provides totals about 8% of our operating budget. Just to give some context, and then happy to answer questions. You know, we've done a number of things to staff up and to continue to respond to the needs that we're seeing. We've hired an additional diversionist for more homeless prevention services. We've hired an additional outreach and engagement case manager to be doing non-traditional hours on evenings and weekends, because we know that that's a gap that's needed. Last year, or in the past 365 days, based on the calls into 211, there were 3,292 calls from Milford into 211. 53% of those calls were for shelter services, and 17% of those calls were for low-income housing questions. Of that, sadly, 10% of the shelter calls go what we deem as unmet, meaning they were calling for shelter, but there wasn't a shelter bed available for them at that time. So what do? That person goes to our diversion services or outreach services while they are on a wait list for a shelter bed, with hopes that their situation is alleviated before they get to the shelter. But so, you know, why I share that is because the scale of our services is great to know, but it's also important to know kind of what that looks like and how that exists within the greater context of need out there. Happy to answer any questions. I know I usually come with this nice like folder to you all with all this cute information. So I feel like just talking sometimes leaves a lot unsaid. So happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation, and certainly again, you do wonderful work fulfilling a critical need. Any questions from members of the board or comments?
Quick question, Chairman. Hi, Jennifer. Did I hear you right? You said that the grant is about 8% of the overall budget.
Yeah, looking at, I mean, we've seen some increases for operating budget. We've carried some of those COVID dollars for hoteling, crisis response, kind of small projects, but overall, this is about 8% of our operating budget.
And, you know, 100 to 125 meals per day. Is it pretty consistent, the same people at like twice a day, or is it a different kind of crowd at lunch versus dinner, or what do you typically see, just out of curiosity?
That's a great question. You know, from anecdotal, we don't, so we do count 1 day per month. We count meals every day, do a demographics count 1 day per month, and that serves as kind of the average. I mean, it's not exact, but it gets us down to it. You know, what we tend to see more during the day are folks who are accessing our other services, so homeless prevention services, outreach and engagement. During the summertime, we see a lot more families for that lunch service. For dinners, we tend to see a lot more older individuals. So a lot more older adults, older families. And that's probably just the way in which our meal services work in the community, what's open during lunch services and what's available in evenings. Very anecdotal, but I can get you more information if you are interested on specifics. But I think that's fairly right from my observation over the years.
No, that's great. I was just curious. Thank you very much. Thank you for all you guys are doing too. It's great.
Thank you.
Good. Well, again, thank you for your time and hard work over the last year, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Last but not least, we have Bridges, page 89, I believe.
Hi there, I'm Jen Fiorillo from Bridges Healthcare, and I'm with Carlos Rodriguez, who's the agency CFO.
Welcome.
Thank you. This year, we're seeking level funding from the City of Milford. We rely on the City of Milford funding and other local funding to fill the gap between what we receive in our grants for our outpatient services, our child and adult outpatient services. and what we get in our reimbursement. So oftentimes there's a gap between the two. And if one program is running, like our child outpatient program is running at a deficit, in the past, I believe, year or two, we've been operating that program at a deficit. We utilize the dollars to fill the gap, the City of Milford dollars, and we also have United Way dollars that we utilize to fill the gap. The last year, fiscal year from 21 to 22, we've seen an increase in about 20% in those requesting services at Bridges. And 40% of those were with children. Usually we serve roughly over 1,300 people in the City of Milford, and that's about 65 to 70% of the people we serve from the City of Milford. But because the number went up, it's likely a little bit higher. And the numbers that we served this last year overall between Milford, Orange, and West Haven were over 2,300. And that is including children, adults, and families of children that we serve for outpatient services, for any kind of care coordination or case management or other wraparound services. We've operated our mobile medication assisted treatment program for individuals who are seeking treatment for opioid use disorder. And we've been doing that now for several years. We park outside of Bethel Shelter 1 day a week, and we offer what's called an induction, which is a first dose of Suboxone to treat opioid use disorder. And we observe people who choose to go this route, going through what they say is withdrawal, but it's not necessarily withdrawal. But we make sure that the person is being monitored while they're going through it after taking the first dose. And we also have peer recovery on the van as well, to offer support and follow up for services, so that if a person decides that they want to utilize our mobile medication assisted treatment vehicle, they can go back to our clinic and follow up with services with us, or they can go elsewhere. Overall, our agency operates about 20 programs. So we also have integrated primary care. We have our care coordination for children. We have case management for adults. We have intensive in-home child and adolescent psychiatric services that we operate out of mainly Milford. So that's our highest level of care for children. And I think one of the things that's notable for us at this point is that we're seeing children with a lot of higher level issues and higher needs. We're seeing them through our school-based health clinics and also in our child outpatient services. So again, we're just seeking level funding this year, and we appreciate your support, your ongoing support.
Thank you, Jen, for the presentation. Again, similar to Bethel, we appreciate the hard work, and it's definitely a critical and unfortunate large need within the community for the type of services you provide. So it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Any questions from comments from members of the board? Well, thanks again for coming out and for your time and your thorough presentation. It's appreciated.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was, I believe, is the last item we have for tonight's hearing. So unless there are any comments or questions from members of the board or Peter or the mayor, or Justin, hello, Justin. We will entertain a motion to recess until it looks like Monday night, which will follow our regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting at 5:30.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we take a recess until Monday, February 23rd at 5:30 p.m., which will coincide with our regular monthly scheduled meeting.
Okay,
I will second your motion.
yes, and just with a note, it's February 27th, but there's a motion made, seconded. And
Did I say February 29th?
23rd, I think it's today, so hopefully,
What did I say?
I'd like to
Hold
go
on.
back in time a little bit, but
February 30th. I'll see you there.
I'm thinking more years than days. How about all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we're in recess until the 27th, 5:30.
That's Monday, right?
That is a Monday, yes. So everyone have a great weekend. We're almost there.
All right. We'll see
Thank
ya.
you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good evening.